I want to welcome the GMs and the wives, the godly men and the warm, inviting, feminine, empathetic women out there. If you lose playfulness, you lose a lot of life. Now, what I mean by this is that playfulness is an essential part of life, and if you take yourself too seriously, you're not going to be able to engage with your creativity, with courage, with really anything that has to deal with any principled value. It's vital that you will need your inner child throughout all of life, right? And if you lose that playfulness, you lose out on your inner child and your life in general. It is the person that exhibits wonder and exhibits a profound wrestling with the creation of the universe itself, in which one can create and play everlasting while improving and increasing in positive emotion, and also ever changing themselves to be the best version of themselves that they can be. You can't do these things without the inner child. And if anybody out there is having difficulty with their inner child healing or anything like that, one thing that is going to be really important for you is to know what your inner child needs. There was a time 3 or 4 years ago where all I did was pretty much paint after work. There was just a period of a few months where all I did was paint, and I was never really a painter growing up. I was never really a drawer either. In fact, I still don't really consider myself to this day to be a painter or a drawer or anything like that, even though I enjoy that kind of activity, and I think that the visual arts has allowed me to see more into the depths of my own psyche at a deeper level than I would have expected, because visual representation has been very powerful for me. I'm a very visual thinker, and so I can think really well in images, and I can also think in words when I want to. And this is something that maybe you can ask yourself. Do you think more in words, or do you think more in abstract images or thoughts where there are things that are happening, but there may not be words for it? If that's the case for you, the latter that is, you're probably dealing with a lot more intuition, a lot more instinct, etc. And if it's the former, then you're probably a bit more logical or technical in how you think. This is not always the case, but that is generally my sense of conviction in all of the people that I've talked to and asked this kind of question to. But healing your inner child is really about knowing what your inner child needs. And at that point in my life, a few years back, I needed to express this inner images, these inner dreams that I had. In fact, a lot of the paintings that I do today are images that I've seen in dreams, or they are built off of things or spirits that I've seen in dreams and in visions, to further encapsulate and consecrate the impression that those images and those dreams have had as an impact in my life. And so creativity is going to be very important for you, because if you don't have that creativity to be expressed unto you and within you, it's going to be very difficult to connect with that inner child. And this is one of the reasons why whenever I go to the gym, if I'm having a day where I feel like instead of running super hardcore for 3 or 4 miles or whatever, I do a minimum of 3 miles usually. But if I'm, instead of wanting to run that day, I'll do some basketball, I'll play some basketball. And the reason that I play basketball is because that is the most childlike quality within me that I can connect to. One of my first words that I was told that I spoke was ball. And I was playing basketball, and I guess I don't know this for a fact. This is the only thing that I've been told, and it does resonate with me. But I would be watching John Stockton and Karl Malone. I lived in Utah. I still live in Utah, but I lived in Utah when I was younger. And I guess I would be playing basketball as I would watch John Stockton and Karl Malone on the TV. And I would pretend to be them. And there's always been this intimate connection with basketball that I've had where I get into a meditative state, and some of you can relate to this perhaps with other sports or with other things in general. Really, whenever I'm being involved in some kind of physical activity, I get into that meditative Zen-like state where I'm just really in a flow state. Or whenever I'm really focused on a task at hand, I get into that flow state. And time just seems to really dissolve before my eyes. And one thing about sports is even if I'm playing somebody that's better than me, I will always want to keep playing. I will always want to keep going. And I never really understood people that, like even chess games or board games, if I lost, I'd want to play again because I want to make sure that not only am I learning how to strategically play better, I'm learning how somebody else is playing and what to do so that I can improve my own game. And it never really understood, like I never got why people would want to just give up if they're losing. In games and such, I would never understand that. I would always have that drive to continue pushing forward because I never wanted to stop playing. I never wanted to stop learning and having that playfulness within me. And I've noticed that the more that I heal my inner child, that because I think this is going to be an ongoing process for our lives, right? There are going to be some things that happen in our lives where it just reminds us of something in the past. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to trigger you, but you remember that. And it's not necessarily that it's like you're not thinking about it all the time, you're not dwelling on it, but if something happens and it reminds you of that thing, it's going to spark some memories. And so you may not be triggered, but you do remember those times, those kinds of traumas perhaps. And so without playfulness, you're going to be living a life that is not in congruence to who you actually are, because if you don't have your inner child with you, let's say, and if you're not capable of parenting your inner child, because that's another thing, that's the whole point of self-discipline and self-development really, is are you able to parent yourself? Can you discipline yourself as if you were a parent unto your inner child? If you were a parent to your inner child, how would you parent that child? That is something that you must understand for yourself. For me specifically, something that I used to do and get carried away with was gluttony, lust, and sloth. Those were my three biggest sins, really. And so what I had to learn was to give myself a sense of urgency, and I had to learn how to really orient my time to ensure that I'm focusing on the things that I need to be focusing on and completely getting rid of and paying no attention to the distractions. And anytime I notice that there's a distraction and I notice, okay, I'm distracting myself because I'm trying to procrastinate. Why do I want to procrastinate? Why am I trying to avoid this thing? Well, it's because that's where the real work is needing to be done. And it's weird because we all know this, right? We all know like where we actually need to put our focus. We just don't want to admit it to ourselves a lot of the time. Because if you sat down and thought to yourself, okay, where am I needing to put more emphasis in my life? Where can I put more care and time and attention in my life? Is it my physical fitness? Is it my emotion regulations? Is it my spirituality? Is it my finances? We all know these things, where we need to put our attention to. It's a matter of accepting it, number one, without being without wanting to reject it or being afraid of that in accepting it. And along with that, we need to create a plan, or at least an aim, in which we're going to make sure that whatever is needing to be put attention to is going to get resolved and created into something better. And so what I had to do when I started to really discipline myself with gluttony was I tracked calories. That was so annoying. And I had no clue how many calories I was actually eating, by the way, until I was tracking my calories. I was tracking my macros. I was tracking all of these things. And it wasn't until I was actually putting in the effort and the time to say, okay, I'm going to actually track this stuff to make sure that I'm actually trying to set myself up for success, is when I did start to lose the weight. Because for those that don't know, I was nearly 200 pounds at one point, and I'm about 155 to 158 now. And so with lust, one of the biggest things was semen retention, but I was already pretty self-disciplined when it came to lust in general by the time I found semen retention, and by the time I found and understood what it really was. I was kind of doing it naturally in some ways, but not intentionally. And so I was not really watching corn for, I haven't watched corn since October of 2021. And so it's been quite a while for me since that happened, but I was still playing with myself every week or two after that, but I just wasn't visually stimulated. And these were things that, like, I thought that that's what we had to do as men. I legitimately thought that that's what we had to do, because, well, you got to get your rocks off to stay healthy, right? Turns out it's not the case at all. And I'm living proof that that is not the case at all. And because I have been on semen retention since May of 2022. And so there was about a 6 month to 8 month period where I was watching no corn, but there was, every now and again, I was playing with myself, but I didn't really reap the benefits that I have now up until I really made a conscious effort to stay disciplined in that. And even then, I wasn't sleeping around or anything like that. There's just never been a time in my life, apart from my early 20s, where I had a few of those one night stands that I thought was, oh, it's just fun, it's just this, it's just that. And after a few of those, I thought to myself, I actually feel worse about myself now than I did before. Why is that? Why do I feel more void in my stomach? It literally felt like there was a hole that I was digging spiritually in my stomach. And the more attention I gave these women just for fun, now there's a difference between this kind of playfulness and not, because I think you can have playfulness in a relationship, but to just be playful and experiment your soul with everybody and just give your soul away, it's not good. It's not good at all. it's no good for anybody, male or female, that I've seen. It ruins family, really, at the end of the day. And I think that that's one of the biggest reasons why playfulness is going to be so impactful on people's lives nowadays, is because we need to understand the importance of family in playfulness. And have you ever noticed that some of the toughest men are really gentle with their family? They have a rough edge around the corners, right? They're rough around the edges to the world, but to their family, they're super kind and caring and attentive and affectionate. And I think that's important. I think that's the way that it ought to be, because a man is supposed to be like that in some ways. A man needs to be that strong core that for the family unit. And if he's not, or he's not there, we see what happens. We get a society like ours today. So take yourself seriously, but be playful, because if you don't have that playfulness, that's where things are going to go awry. And for everybody that's made it to this far in the video, shout out to all the Americans. Happy 4th of July, and peace be with you. I hope this message was insightful and informative. Until next time.